à-bas-le-ciel.
Yo, what's up? I got a genuinely meaningful question from one of my Patreon supporters, and it's kind of been burning a hole in my pocket. I've been meaning to get around it and answer it. So this question comes from Mohammed Socrates. Normally, I only use the first names of people who write into me with questions on Patreon by email or otherwise. In this case, I feel confident that I can refer to him as Socrates without revealing too much of his personal information. But anyway, shout out to Mohammed Socrates. He writes to me saying, I would love to hear your personal experience with non-vegan friends and your philosophy on friendship in general. I think you could give us a unique perspective and take on such a delicate and deep matter given your experience and age. Wow. So it's a flattering question. And it is true, more than a year ago, I did make some videos talking about friendship, mostly in relationship to politics, political aspirations, trying to make the world a better place, and how friendship is an important part of that. But he's obviously asking for something deeper and broader, and also addressing friendship with non-vegans. The nature of friendship between adults, I think, is very different in Scotland as opposed to England. I think it's very different in Portugal as opposed to Spain. I know it's very different in France in contrast to Germany. And within the south of France, you could see right away how different it was for French people who were of Moroccan ancestry, North African ancestry, as opposed to French people of other ethnic origins. So friendship, sometimes across very small cultural divisions, small cultural barriers, can be profoundly different. And I have an old friend or frenemy here in China who used to say, he has a PhD in history, and he used to say that different social classes generally relate to one another like different ethnic groups. And the first time he said that to me, actually, I thought, yeah, you know what? I've never quite thought of it in those terms before. Maybe I never quite wanted to accept it in those terms before. But yeah, as much as we talk about generalizations about behavior and culture in terms of nationality or ethnicity, very often the differences between rich and poor, the sometimes subtle dotted lines between the social classes as you move down from grades between rich and poor, these things also influence the nature of friendship. But for me, coming from Canada as I do, the main disappointment in my life was discovering the extent to which friendship between adults only exists when people have a common motive linked to sex, money, or once in a while, things fall into a third category along the lines of drugs and alcohol. When you're clean and sober as I am, I don't drink any alcohol, I don't use any drugs, you're taking yourself out of those lesser categories, and then it seems like people are only motivated to make the time to talk to you if they're motivated by sex or if they're motivated by money. And once you're familiar with that, whenever you become familiar with that, in Canadian culture, and I think in some cultures more than others as an adult, then I think you start to value almost any friendship that's offered to you that stands on a basis outside of those things. Whether it's intellectual or political, it's based on some kind of positive aspiration to change the world, or even if it is just based on curiosity. So what is friendship? I think the one original thought I have to contribute here is that contrary to so much of our cultural programming growing up, I do not believe that friendship is about knowing other people, is about understanding other people, or that it is fundamentally and integrally about them understanding you, about being understood, about being known, or about being appreciated. I think if you approach friendship in terms of appreciation in that sense, you're really on a downward spiral of looking for other people's approval and other people's validation. And if you're looking for understanding, I think, again, that really may not be a friend that you're looking for. I think the crucial discipline you must have in order to make new friends and to maintain friendships over long periods of time, sometimes over large distances, is actually to be detached about whether or not you know somebody at all. To be able to set aside again and again everything you do know about somebody and to encounter them without those preconceptions, without those expectations, to let them show you who they really are. So for me, I think that friendship between adults relies much less on knowing and being known, and much more on setting aside your preconceptions and being willing to say, I don't think I know you. I don't assume I understand you. I'm going to meet you today, and I'm going to find out who you are. And in many ways, some subtle and profound, some obvious, you're not the same person you were 5 years ago. And the people who can't do that, again, those of you who have some gray hairs, some of you will be nodding your heads and saying, yeah, I know just what you're talking about. But it's really impossible to maintain a friendship with someone who still thinks of you as the man you were at age 25 or as the teenager you were at age 15. Some people seek comfort in that. Some people want to have friends and relatives who will forever regard them as the person they were when they played high school football or when they had some particular achievement in their life in university in their younger years or what have you. But it doesn't matter whether it's 25 or 45 or any other moment in time. I think that the type of knowledge we're talking about in friendship is not love, is not certainty, is not understanding, but is instead a constant state of somewhat refined doubt and openness. Friendship, I think, is not about coming together and staying together. I think it is, to quote myself, a perpetual parting of ways. You part ways again and again. You come together again and again. And you discover who someone is. Not from a blank sheet of paper. Not from a state of total ignorance. But I guess from a state of compassionate inquiry. Put it that way. Because on a deeper level, you care about this person enough to let them show you who they are. You care about them enough that you want to find out who they are. But you have the discipline in yourself not to bring your preconceptions to that, not to insist on your understanding of who they ought to be. This is why it is so difficult for parents to really be friends with their own children. Even if they behave in a manner that's friendly, most parents are constantly hung up on their notion of who their child could be, who their child should be, who their child ought to be. And from my perspective, that is, so to speak, the death of friendship.
À-bas-le-ciel.